Welcome to the Driven to Thrive podcast. My name is Veronica Maldonado-Torres, and today we're going to be talking to game changers, innovators, leaders about what truly drives them to run their companies and to live their life on their own terms, driven to thrive. Today, I have with me two very special guests, Sandeep Gauba, CEO of Metasys, and Romeen Sheth, President of Metasys. We're going to learn about the incredible company that Sandeep, that you have built over the last 20 years. And I'm just so excited to share the story behind your personal leadership beliefs and how you've instilled that into the company. I'm excited to share today about the next generation leadership that Romeen has brought into the company not too long ago. Metasys has incredible accolades. You are very well known in the workforce solutions and management space. You have NMSDC, Supplier of the Year, Inc. 5000, year over year, top best places to work. The accolades are long, and I'd love for you guys to share a little bit more about what those look like, because it's also important, I think, as we highlight CEOs in our Driven to Thrive CEO series, that accolades are fantastic. It's what's behind that's actually allowing these accolades to take place to begin with, and what's really driving that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So let's get started. First, Sandeep, a pleasure to have you, and Romeen, a pleasure to have you on the Driven to Thrive show.
Thanks so much for having us, Veronica.
So Sandeep, tell us a little bit about Metasys first, and then we'll get a little bit more into who you are and why you do what you do.
Absolutely. So very blessed to have started Metasys about 20 years ago in the year 2000. We actually just celebrated our 20th anniversary in January of this year.
And not a lot of companies can say that, so congratulations.
Thank you.
No, absolutely feel very, very blessed about that. And when I was kind of reflecting upon Metasys and the journey that we have had, I was trying to think about, what really defines us, as a company. And really what I came to the conclusion was that it is a happy team. And that is the underlying theme which I think really defines Metasys. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have been very fortunate and blessed that we have had several accolades, along the way, recognized by the Inc. 5000 for 5 years, actually 6 years in a row. Mm-hmm. We were an Inc. 5000 honoree. Have won the National Minority Supplier Development Council Supplier of the Year Award. And last year, one of the biggest achievements we had was winning the GMSDC Eagle Award, which is to, it kind of recognizes you for paying it forward for giving additional business to diversity minority suppliers.
And being incredible leaders.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So when you say happy people, mm-hmm. I think you can only create a happy organization when maybe the leadership is also happy. So we want to uncover, what that means and how do you create that sense of happiness and that culture to be able to be this incredible brand that you are, and then the transition phase that you are, and in the work that you do, which is all around talent solutions.
Absolutely.
So we're going to dig a little deeper into that. And then Romeen, you're ex-McKinsey,
yes,
right? Mm-hmm. Been a management consultant for years and years, mm-hmm. and recently joined the organization about a year and a half ago, if I'm not mistaken. Harvard background, published in several periodicals and interviews. You've got a great depth of knowledge that you're bringing into Metasys now after a year and a half. Thank you for being with us, and share with us a little bit about you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you, Veronica. I did spend quite a bit of the early part of my career at McKinsey & Company doing strategy consulting. And in my time there, I really looked across a whole bunch of different industries and a whole bunch of different horizontal functions, right? So I did cost optimization projects, merger integrations, sales channel strategy projects for payments businesses, automotive businesses, retail businesses. One of the things I enjoyed the most in my time at McKinsey was my work in learning, capability building, and talent development. And it was actually how, Sandeep and I started chatting, prior to my joining Metasys, is one of the pieces that I was really seeing, which was going on in the market, was this evolution on how organizations were thinking about talent. I was having a lot of conversations with senior HR leaders, senior procurement leaders, IT leaders in organizations. And there was a fundamental shift on how they were thinking about their entire talent base, right? HR had a very strong perspective on how they thought about full-time talent, and they were transitioning their mindset on how they were really thinking about contract talent. We were talking about it before we got on the podcast that there's 5 generations in the workplace now. Right. And
dramatically changing everything, shifting from all perspectives.
Absolutely. Right. And so whether that's changing leadership, that's changing connectivity, fulfillment, meaning, there's a lot of underlying nuances and themes to how the future of work is actually evolving. And so one of the pieces that I got most excited about was really joining Sandeep in a business that had a very strong foundation, had a very strong customer base, and had a lot of happy people, and were really fulfilled and coming to work and showing up to work. Really excited about what they were doing and excited about the mission that our organization solves for, and how can we take that to the next level, right? And so that's you're correct that I've been at the company for about 1.5 years, and really the intentionality of joining the business and joining Sandeep in partnership was how can we really elevate the company and take all the historical success that he's built upon, his team has built upon. 20 years is not an easy feat, as you mentioned, and really take it for the next 20 years and beyond.
Lots of changes, lots of transition, lots of things to keep abreast. At the foundation, leadership. So I'm going to pivot back to Sandeep.
Sure.
And part of what I love about this show is that we're going beneath the surface. Not what we see, but who is the person behind, who are the people behind this company, this organization? How are your beliefs kind of injected into the company? So take us back, Sandeep, 20 years, and you started this company with a hope and a dream, but who were you? Where did you always have a vision of seeing Metasys the way it is today? And then the transition that we'll talk about later, the next iteration, solutions, software that you have coming about as well, part of your legacy building. Take us back to the beginning. Did you always see this? I mean, but leaders, the way that I've seen it, they either see it or they fall into it, or they're pushed into it.
Right.
So which one are you? Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. That's a very, very fully loaded question.
It is.
Veronica.
It is.
And I think it actually hits to the core of who you are,
right,
where it goes, because life has different things that it brings to you at different times.
Yes.
Right. I started my career in corporate America, very successful, with United Parcel Service, essentially driving the strategy programs and so on.
That would be UPS.
UPS.
For sure.
Creativity, innovation, that's what really, defined me even in my corporate career. But I think even kind of going forward, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Right. So
You fall into that bucket.
I fall into that bucket. But I think at the core of it, when you talk about drive, what really drives you, it truly is that I am driven by that there has to be value creation with fulfillment. What is really the drive? That is what really drives you. And truly how it has transpired for me is that value creation while spreading happiness is the key.
Value creation plus spreading happiness
yes,
is the key.
Is
the key to what? What is that the key to?
It's the key to making and giving people and everybody that you come in touch with a sense of personal fulfillment. So our lives, whether we are in corporate America or as an entrepreneur, what fulfills my life is that I'm constantly spreading happiness. But while running a business, you also have to create value. Right. And if I have to define myself, I'm an innovator. I love to create stuff, and I always love to leave a mark, leaving the world in a better place in each and every aspect, whether it is business or a personal life for anybody. So if I try to translate that to business, I call it, I kind of phrase it as the ICE model.
The ICE model.
Okay. So for ICE to me is really I for inspiration.
Okay.
C for capability.
Okay.
E for experience or effort.
Okay.
right? And all that put together to generate results. So inspiration plus capability plus effort to generate impact or results. So inspiration to me really is winning the hearts of people and making sure that they are feeling inside and inspired enough to come to work every day and give it their best. Right? That is a sign of fulfillment. Their hearts are into it. Capability to me is knowledge. It's the intellectual value, that you bring to the table. And that is, again, for any business enterprise to be able to bring knowledge, thought leadership, value in a different way is the key element in business. And E for effort. Without effort or hard work, wherever you are, you have to work hard. And that is what really then the combination of those three, where your heart, your intellect, and your body are in full unison to deliver results.
That's so beautiful.
Is
profound.
Thank you. And to me, that is truly the experience I have wanted everybody to have, whether I was in corporate America or as an entrepreneur. I think as an entrepreneur, you can drive that culture even more because you are closer to everybody. And generally, a lot of the culture in terms of the hiring, bringing the people on board and cultivating, kind of everything happens in unison with that effort.
Would you say that this has been something that you were taught, surrounded by, somebody impacted you in your life, that you were able to clearly see this? Or was it the sum of your experiences? Because what you're sharing is a recipe for happiness and for value creation with the people around you. So where did this come from? How did you learn this?
You ask very deep questions.
Or were you just born with this incredible wisdom and insight and an understanding of really how to extract the very best of the people around you? That's a question I would love to learn, and I would also like to say that things have changed. I would say there was a time where you go to work and you clock in and you clock out. And now, we're having conversations about personal fulfillment and are you fulfilled in your life?
Absolutely.
Which is what Driven is about. It's not just being driven to success. It's driven to thrive. It's driven to bring your whole self into what you do. So things are changing in that aspect too in organizations where we can have a deeper conversation to draw that out of you, to change your life, to transform it, to bring meaning. But where did you learn this from? Was this the UPS way, the UPS culture? Was it the sum of your experiences? Was this somebody in your life that showed you, or that you just had to grow into that as a leader?
I think it's all of the above.
I answered the question.
Yeah, but truly, I think, first of all, all of us, and my father used to share this with me, all of us are unique individuals born with the gift of God, and everybody has their traits and strengths. I think there was an element of me that is truly a gift of God that kind of comes with it. I think the parents and your upbringing and your friends from your childhood have a significant impact on your thinking. And that frames the foundational element of values in life. And I was very fortunate. I had a happy family, right? And then you kind of also come through experiences in life with persons, friends, other people's lives. And then when you come to the corporate life, you see all kinds of things.
Right.
All kinds of things. And then if you're fortunate to have good mentors along the way, they guide you, they help you navigate, help you understand yourself better and how you should interact. But the key element of this always is, how are you connecting with others? What is the underlying theme? And for me, the underlying theme always has been, how do you make a difference? How do you make a difference while people around you feel fulfilled? How are you creating happiness for them? And it just happens on its own. I mean to say, it's really a blessing. And for me, it's made my journey very pleasuresome.
There's also, however, a great sense of intentionality behind this mindset. To know that you want to connect with people and leave happiness and create impact. There is an intentionality behind that. And I know that it's carried through your organization, which we'll talk about as well. But were you always present of that the intention that you needed or that you wanted? Because it is a decision and a choice. We can engage with people day in and day out and decide whether to create that opportunity for a ripple, of impact, to know that they're significant and of value and seen and recognized. There's intentionality behind that. So how does that play into what you do and how you lead?
It's truly, Veronica, it is being aware of things around you, because we are not happy all the time.
Right.
Right,
that's true. We have ebbs and flows.
We have ebbs and flows.
Storms and sunshines.
Absolutely. So whether we are in a corporate environment or a personal environment, there are personal adversities and challenges. There are personal successes. Similarly, there are corporate or challenges and adversities and corporate successes. The key is to be aware of it, and at a time somebody needs a level of support. What does a happy team mean?
Right.
A happy team means that if a teammate of yours needs help or support, or you're sensing something, you're able to help or support them.
You can sense the gap that's existing, right?
Right. And your team members do too.
Yeah.
Right? That is what defines the culture of the company. Okay. So, in our company, to be quite candid with you, we could be going through the toughest of times or challenges, but we'll be laughing, having fun, and still achieving the goals and the impact, because we know that we have a job to do, which is to create value, whether it is for our clients, our employees, or the supplier partners that we work with.
Excellent.
And amongst ourselves, we are always taking care of each other. And that creates that strong bonding, which I tell you, just from a work perspective, work doesn't feel like work.
Right. You're in a safe space. Yeah, you're in a safe space.
You enjoy life.
And you enjoy it.
You're delivering.
And everybody's contagiously bringing the best out of each
Absolutely.
other. Well, you mentioned adversity. Adversity is a lot about what I talk about with Driven. It's, those moments that come into your personal life or into your business where you see the moments of adversity really call us and propel us to be our best, grow into our best, if we see it that way. So can you share with us what is one of the greatest personal challenges or lessons that you've had? And then we'll pivot a bit to Romeen.
Sure. I'll kind of bucketize them into 2 or 3 categories, because challenges are external and internal. Right? An external challenge that we faced was actually in the 2004 time frame. I really had meteoric rise in the company in the first 4 years, and we grew significantly with one of our clients. But in 2004, they actually decided to take all of their business offshore.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That had a significant impact and really tested the character of our company. And you know what? We stood together, and from there, believe it or not, within 3 years later, we were the NMSDC Supplier of the Year.
You grew through that challenge.
We grew through that experience.
What changed? What changed in which you grew from it? More camaraderie with the team, more solution focus? What?
I think the belief in yourself.
The belief, yeah.
The belief in yourself and knowing that you're providing good value.
Yeah. Standing your
Right?
ground and
And then
understanding.
interestingly, there are people, clients who are standing behind you, supporting you.
Excellent.
Right?
Well, we've gotten to know a little bit about your beliefs and happiness and the value creation
Sure.
that with all of the folks I've had a chance to ever have a conversation about you, they see that. It exudes from you and obviously within your organization. We had an incredible conversation on a plane. I want to say maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago now, maybe.
There's a very elevating discussion.
It was talking about self-awareness and discovery and goals and adversity and overcoming obstacles and all of the subjects that I love and that we have a mutual passion for as well. But we also talked about shifting. You talked about a personal legacy that you wanted to leave behind. And after 20 years, seeing an opportunity to impact other companies and organizations and talking about the next iteration transformation of Metasys into GoProcure. So I want to talk slightly about that as we bring Romeen into this conversation about how you're in creation and innovation. Constantly innovating, constantly thinking about what's next. What are the opportunities? What are the gaps? Tell us about that moment where you realized, I want to work a little bit more into legacy building after this time, and then how Romeen has come into the picture since.
Absolutely. I'll be delighted to. You know, Veronica, when you start a new business, it is not easy, right? You have to be everything. To be able to do
every entrepreneur, CEO watching right now.
I was very fortunate that at that time, you know, I got associated with the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council. And through their diversity programs, met several champions of supplier diversity, which gave us the initial opportunity. They believed in us. They brought us into corporate America. And with those opportunities, we were able to grow. And you're able to excel in those environments as an entrepreneur because if you're driven by value creation, you're driven by innovation, you're always solutioning a better solution for the client. And that, as it is recognized, you get an opportunity to grow. So certainly, we started in the professional staffing business and IT consulting business. And then we evolved into workforce management solutions. And that is a very thriving part of our business with MetaProcure at this stage, or Metasys Technologies. What we saw in that domain was that was labor-based, and it uses a technology platform. And we saw that there is a gap when you come to the non-labor side on the technology platform. That is what actually gave the birth to GoProcure, you know, which is really an e-commerce platform, which makes it very easy for any client to transact business on it. So it is an evolution story, you know, from the perspective of how Metasys from professional staffing and consulting continue evolving into, you know, a workforce management solution. And now Romeen has taken that even further, and I want to give context to this. When we come back to the ICE model, we share similar people beliefs, which is the inspiration part of it. The capability, the knowledge, as you start getting into newer domains, Romeen has brought a thought leadership, which is absolutely phenomenal. So we have further transformed the workforce management practice to a total management solutions practice. And then certainly the effort part, you know, he has again raised the bar on that with increasing methods, methodologies, processes based upon his prior experience that he's further able to bring us to the next stage of scaling as we go forward. And all of that has positive impact for our employees and our clients, etc. GoProcure, from an innovation perspective, is at the pioneering edge of technology. You know, last year we were fortunate to have been awarded the FinTech Award by the Technology Association of Georgia.
Incredible.
Great to be in great company with companies like Cabbage, Paymetrics, etc. And we are providing a solution which is industry leading in that domain. So very excited about that, and very excited in having Romeen on board, because what he's able to bring in the role of president to Metasys Technologies is what I'm really looking forward to. And he's already had significant impact from scaling to scale to the next level for us.
And I've seen that, from all of the verbiage that's come out of the next generation iteration of the company name, the slogan, the theme, the vision. Romeen, tell us more about what you've brought into the picture and your experience in transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I was talking about a little bit earlier from my prior experience was just having a lot of conversations with senior HR leaders, right? And really understanding the way HR was thinking about the full talent base, right? So there was a lot of sophistication, a lot of intentionality, right? I like your use of the word intentionality because there's a lot of intentionality on full-time talent. There wasn't as much intentionality, innovation on non-full-time talent. And we're seeing that emerging theme become more prevalent in the enterprise.
And why does it matter?
It matters significantly so because the nature of work is changing.
Right. Sure.
And so when you think about, the latest kind of industry studies say that 40% of the workforce, in the next few years will actually be non-full-time talent, right? They'll be
non-full-time talent.
Yep. So they'll be engaged on project-based work, contract-based work, right? Different sorts of modules. And so there's a whole latent opportunity, right, around innovation there. The key part of that, though, is even though we're living in a technology-laden world, there's all sorts of different types of models. At its core and at its fundamental, this is a people business. And so when we thought about, our business and really the next evolution for Metasys, there was a lot of intentionality and a lot of focus on how do we bring people-centric thought process, human-centered design back into the core. So our tagline, as you mentioned, is beyond systems, people matter, right? Metasys is large systems. And it comes from a fundamental belief of shaping systems and processes for organizations to create value. And our tagline as we go into the next 20 years, the reason it's beyond systems, people matter, is we're entering the fourth industrial revolution. Artificial intelligence is the latest buzz, right? And it's already having massive impact, and it's going to continue to have massive impact. And so taking a Luddite approach that technology or artificial intelligence, machine learning are not going to have impact is not the right way to think about it. But the right way to think about it is to say, how is that technology going to empower people and put people in their best self and their best perspective? And that's actually really, when we take a step back, our jobs is really being stewards of the ship. It's putting people in their best position, and not only internally, but with our clients, right? Making sure that they're finding the right, talent, and they're thinking about their workforce in the right way. And so that's a little bit of how we've thought about the natural evolution. So you're right, if you go to our site, there's a lot of intentionality on verbiage. And it's because there's a lot of intentionality in the conversations we're having, with executives at the companies we serve and companies we don't serve on how we think about workforce. A really interesting stat I'll give you is 50% of CXOs, I say CXOs intentionally, any type of C-suite leader, talent is one of their top 3 priorities. Right?
It's a total pain point.
Absolutely.
The retention, the acquisition. I mean, there's a lot of money going straight to the talent labor piece.
Absolutely.
Of the P&L. So you're bringing that solution to the table.
That's right. And the focus is, ultimately, and this is one of the things, I saw from a prior life, is that businesses are different until they're not different, right? Every business from an externalities perspective is very different. Market dynamics, competitors, pricing, there's a whole bunch of differentiating pieces in business. But at the core, companies and businesses are collections of people. And those challenges are consistent across the board. So when we talk with clients, whether you're in manufacturing and healthcare, telecom, the people issues or the people challenges, the people opportunities are all the same, right? It really takes that intentionality in thinking how you construct that workforce to bring out the best in people.
So tell me about how, as you came in with this renewed, invigorated sense of purpose around humans, around people. How did that shift take place within the organization? When you're transitioning and pivoting and elevating, there's a human aspect of maybe resistance potentially, but how do you move into that? And I want to move into that. To have a great vision, to see the gap to understand the steps that you need to take in order to move this to the next iteration, the company, the people, the vision, the clients, helping them understand where you're at, where you're going. The market validation is there, the shifts, the industrial revolution. I'm sorry, the digital. What did I just say? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
It's the
fourth industrial revolution.
That's right. I know.
Which is
fourth
digital.
Which is digital,
Exactly.
right? The fourth industrial revolution. And then, you see the 5 generations in the workforce, then you see majority, minority, then you see a cultural influence, then you see immigrant population, then this gig economy, for lack of a better word. How do you move into execution? Okay, because all of that is a huge bucket. So the execution of all of that and bringing it to life. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Veronica. It's interesting because whenever I think about businesses or organizations, businesses either have it or they don't. And what I mean by that is they either have good culture when you're entering, or they don't have good culture when you're entering. And to be clear, I think there's actually challenges and opportunities in both situations, right? I think in a world in which you don't have a strong culture, and you're entering in, as I was entering into the business, it's a very different playbook and it's a very different mindset, right? Which is there's a lot more challenges, but there's opportunities from the perspective of you kind of have a one-track mindset of saying, let me really shape the organization to me, right? In an organization that has a very strong culture, which Metasys did, right? There's a strong opportunity because there's a foundation, but there's actually a very different challenge, which is it's a lot less about you. So my role, what was very important for me coming into an organization that had a historically very strong culture, right? And as you alluded to, right? One thing I'll say about Sandeep, because he'll never say it, is, the market, our customers, one of the most fulfilling things for me, candidly, in my first 60 days when I talked to, a whole bunch of our customers, employees, was the amount of praise that they really, had for Sandeep. And that's a testament really to the culture that he's built, right? And so the challenge in that type of opportunity, actually for someone like me, is to find my place as opposed to drive, a fundamental way of doing things. In an organization that doesn't have a strong culture, you can come in as a leader and really steer the ship to mold you. Right. And impart that down to the team. In an organization that has a strong culture, it's actually a very different challenge. And so one of the pieces, and one of the reasons our partnership has been so successful so far, and I think has the legs to go forward on that dimension, is Sandeep and I had a lot of conversations before getting into the mechanics of business models and plans and so on and so forth on really aligning on a vision of how we think about building an organization. And really aligning on the way we think about people, right? The way we think about what gives folks fulfillment, right? On what drives people, right? And how to execute. I think the ICE model is completely right, which is without inspiration, without the heart, the capability part and the effort part really don't matter, right? You have to have that at the core. And so one of the key pieces that we really focused on is that we said, how do we take already very strong culture and continue to mold it in a way that's strong, but really actually focus more on the next dimension of capability and execution, right? So I think it's a different challenge, actually, if we had to think and toggle at the top level.
The next dimension, what does that look like?
So for example, when one of the things we've really done over the last year is we've become a much more data-driven organization, right? And from a mindset perspective, we've been much more of a problem-solving, hypothesis-driven organization, right? So never does anybody in our teams or in our company look at a challenge and say, it's perfectly fine not to have the answer. It's perfectly not okay not to have a path forward, right? Which is to say, what are the next steps? How do we figure out the solutions, right? We're not going to have all the answers, and they're never in our control, right? But what is in our control is to say, what's the next step, right? And so when you have a team that's had good camaraderie, has good trust, right, has good foundational culture, what you find is that you have a lot of individuals that say, this is fantastic because it's the next level of development, right? It's very hard to impart that message if you don't have the foundational pieces.
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, that is part of our driven model, is that, you identify the obstacles in the way, but it's like, what's the step to get out of it? There's always a focus about how do we win?
Absolutely.
And how do we create a pathway to win? And how do we do that together?
Yep.
How do we do that personally? How do we do that professionally?
Yep.
And if you don't have the foundation or the baseline to think in that mindset, you have, and hope you've mentioned that your culture already has that. But for those that don't, you first have to show the path of how to win, of how to overcome, of how to create that focus on moving forward and executing.
Absolutely.
So,
and it's an evolving organism, right? We're not there perfectly, and we never will be, because there's always more room to grow and to learn.
But that's the whole part about staying focused on, thriving. It's continuous. It's an end and a beginning, and then it's the moving forward. It's never going to stop.
That's exactly
and
right.
I think that's where that grit, creating a sense of grit and resilience, and it's a challenge too. People move away from challenges, some, but others run towards it. How do we create the stamina and the endurance to build that forward motion, that no matter what obstacle comes, and it's one of your core values.
Yep.
I did check that out on the website. And I don't know exactly which one. It's more about, it's moving forward. It's the path forward.
That's exactly right.
No matter what, there is a path forward.
That's exactly right.
Which aligns with my own personal beliefs about why we're even doing Driven to begin with, why we're even here.
Yeah,
it's to show companies, it's to show people that no matter what, there is a path forward.
That's right.
There is a way. If you have the vision, if you lost the vision, if you need to regain the vision, if you need to change things up, if you need to get certain skill sets necessary, new talent, to reimagine what the future could look like, because that playbook of the way it's been done no longer works. It's about believing in the infinite possibilities and finding how it works. And I'm so excited to share what Metasys is doing and GoProcure is doing and making that happen. So tell us about, how have you been challenged as a leader, in this process? What is it? How have you had to maybe sharpen your sword, or maybe take a seat back and maybe not have the McKinsey hat versus more of an entrepreneur hat, which
absolutely.
is a huge shift from management consulting to seeing from an outside perspective and then getting straight into the heart of an organization.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it on the head, right? So when I think about challenges, I think in two buckets, right? One is I think about personal challenges, and then I think about organizational challenges. The biggest personal challenge and mindset shift that I've had to make is exactly the one that you mentioned, right? Is falling out of a mindset of, looking at things from a overarching strategic perspective, and then staying there, right? And not translating that down into the mechanics of living and breathing and all the nuances of actually carrying that forward. It's a challenge, right? And it has actually nothing to do with intellect. It has nothing to do with capability. It's a very different emotion set. It's a very different mindset shift, right? So that's certainly been...
That's where the EQ is really the emotional...
Significantly so. And I think even, I think very good consultants, in the role you play with the companies you work with, right?
Yes.
I think very good consultants are actually some of the best EQ folks in the world, right? But that being said, I think it's a highly different emotional quotient and emotional approach towards consulting versus building your own business, right? So I think that's definitely one key piece. I think the other key...
So maybe it's making you a little bit more human?
Maybe human differently.
Human differently.
I like that, because he's really, I think that was one of the core elements that we totally were spot on.
People-centric.
That's
People-centric.
Yeah.
So I think
more
that's...
empathetic, per se.
Sure. And empathetic, I think, in a different way, right? So I think that's one key piece. I think the other challenge, it's a very exciting challenge, but it's one we constantly face, is for a rapidly scaling organization, you're constantly reinventing yourself, right? I think we've been very fortunate to be working with fantastic customers and partners that have shown the belief in us to give us more and more work. It has allowed us to hire more and more people. It's allowed us to expand, right, domestically and internationally. But what comes with that is challenge. You are constantly, right as you feel you have hit your stride, you're getting flipped to the next dimension, right? Which is a great problem to have in business. And we've been fortunate to have that as an organization, but it's a challenge nonetheless. And it's a mindset, a challenge, an operational challenge, an execution challenge that we've had to impart in our teams. And I think part of, Veronica, what you were talking about earlier of, making sure what drives a very strong culture is actually attracting people that do want to win and attracting people that do want to have a good time and have fun together, right? And part of the mechanism behind scaling is you have to have folks like that on your team. Companies, regardless of what industry you're in, are a collection of your people, right? And the only way that you are going to win, you are going to grow, you were alluding to it earlier that the interesting story is not hearing about the accolades. The interesting story is hearing about what has contributed to those accolades. And it's really a collection of, Sandeep and I here have the pleasure of talking to you and telling the story. It's really the 100 people, in our organization that are doing the heavy lifting and the hard work to put us in a position to share their story, right? It's as much as their story as it is our story.
And I love that you always go back to the people. You always go back to those that are collectively coming into this team environment to win together and reflecting and recognizing the value of what they bring. It's great to have a coach, but if you don't have players that are, engaged and really feel that they add to the whole team environment, then what do you really have? It's a collective. It's that camaraderie that's built. Absolutely. And I love hearing that. I would love to, as we kind of close out a bit, talk about how are you equipping yourselves as leaders today? We've mentioned all of the shifts in the market, the fourth industrial revolution, the change in culture and community and how we view work and how we value work and whether we like flexibility or not and how we communicate with one another. The challenge of a leader today, I think, is so much more complex than ever before. And I believe that the driven CEO that I see in you both, and driven leaders, is an inclusive leader, is a growth-minded leader, is empathetic, socially conscious, and someone that has a drive for excellence and that also has global awareness. But what are you doing today to continuously improve yourselves as your clients, your organizations, the organizations that you support, the employees how are you constantly equipping yourselves in this day and age of leadership and running your business?
Absolutely. Sandeep, why don't you take that? I have perspectives on that as well, but I know we both have some good perspectives on that one.
So absolutely, and be delighted to. So first of all, Veronica, I'll come back to that ICE model again.
Yes. I love that ICE model. Got to do something with that, Sandeep.
Right. But truly, the human part of it, the inspiration, is very much at the core. We all have to be tied to that common thread and that belief.
Yes. So
when you reflect upon that too, that element can never go away, but it only has to be enhanced. What happens in an environment or a company where you're growing or scaling, you're adding newer and newer team members to it.
Right.
So what it does is the grassroots culture has to be there, but upon that, as we build, we do not want to lose what we have built upon, but make it better. So the leaders that we bring on board, and we have actually promoted several leaders, within our company, and because they have kind of demonstrated not only through their commitment and delivery, but also their belief in good values and being able to drive the business, being empathetic to our team members and being good coaches. And so we have increasingly, as we are going forward, we are bringing those kind of thought processes across the company so that as we are training our next set of leaders, we are all being good coaches to them.
Excellent.
So that human element, while we feel inside in the business world, it has to be translated to execution, right?
Which is which is a critical component. You can feel inspired, but you have to move that into something tangible, executable.
Yeah, because we can't be everywhere.
So it's a coaching organization now. So the next iteration has become what you naturally were always creating the next leg or tier of leaders that then coach the next, which is what you, I'm sure, do a lot of consulting on as well, and supporting the organizations that you see that have massive groups of people that they need to lead and develop and keep inspired.
Absolutely.
You know, and for me, that's the line of work that I personally love is how do you create that sense of inspired performance?
Yeah.
Well, you can't have inspired performance if you don't have somewhat of an inspired light, you know, a reason for being, you know, and how does that translate? And I think people are really seeking that more and more in this day and age than ever before.
Yep.
Other generations were about, you know, the paycheck. And it wasn't about, do I find inspiration in what I do?
Sure.
It was, there is only a certain amount of jobs. I need to, you know, bring the bacon home, you know, basically. But that mindset is changing and continues to change, and that purpose and meaning in work. I love that. So you're creating that next tier, that next group of folks that evoke the core values that can develop that continue to develop that culture within your organization. But you as a leader, how are you? So you're paying that forward, and you're also surrounded by people that I'm sure you're inspired by, because naturally we're inspired by those people as well, I believe.
Absolutely.
I would say for myself, just sitting here having a conversation, the inspiration is tangible for me, you know, in the air here. But what are you doing to equip yourself as Sandeep and Romeen?
Yeah.
You know, whether it's what are you reading, what are you watching, who are you conversing with, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
To be able to see the gaps and grasp meaning and inspiration to then put it back in the organization or into your own life and the people you serve.
You know, one of the things I think, Veronica, that's both Sandeep and I actually bond on this in slightly different ways, though, is we are huge stewards of taking inspiration from the outside. Okay. And Sandeep knows this, I love business. Any business, right? I love talking to companies. I love investing in companies. I love talking to founders. And one of the biggest things I focus on is understanding how other leaders transcend in their organizations and their industries. And I look at it actually candidly as outsourced R&D, right? And taking inspiration and effort from what are other people doing in other spaces that's really successful. One of the things Sandeep is really good about is finding that inspiration completely in non-business, in every other aspect of life. And so many of the conversations we have are consistently pulling a thread from a conversation I've had, from a conversation he's had, from something I've read, from something he's read, that are either more business-centric or non-business-centric, and seeing how we can push the envelope forward. One of the frameworks that I love that Tesla uses is this framework called mission to metrics. And the idea is that we have to have a big, bold North Star mission, but underlying it, we have to have the metrics by which we operate. And the famous story in the Tesla scenario is somebody from the outside that was considering investing in the company was walking through the facility. And of course, they're making cars, right? And electric cars. And someone asked a line engineer, what is it that you're doing? Now, there's a lot of different ways to answer that question, right? But what this individual answered is that we are creating an electric future. That's what I'm doing. But to do that, right, I am specifically building, and it got into a very detailed lineage, this rotary piece in an engine, right? So every person in the organization knows exactly what they're doing is not, I'm mechanically putting this together.
Right.
What they're doing is they're building an electric future.
Right.
Right.
That's such a huge mission to feel. That truly is driving meaning behind that one piece.
Absolutely.
And
the importance of that lineage is you can also get lost in vision. You can get lost in having a conversation in the clouds or at the 100,000 feet. But the only way that you actually create impact is when you do draw it all the way down at the metrics level. And specifically, what is everybody's role? What is everybody's responsibility? And a key understanding in the organization that no task is beneath you, right? And each task has its own relative importance. It'd be a falsehood to say every single task has the same importance. We would never advocate that. In fact, every task in your own individual, piece of work has its own competing priorities. But the idea and the understanding that each relative piece that you're doing has relative importance to this larger mission is incredibly important. So that's actually one of the pieces we've talked about quite a bit in the company. One of the other pieces.
That's very profound.
One of the other pieces we've talked about in kind of building the organization. Sandeep and I are both big sports fans. And one of the pieces that we've talked about is you want to build an organization of, I'm personally a big tennis fan, he's a big golf fan. You want to build an organization of Roger Federers and Tiger Woods. So what does that mean? There's a very specific meaning behind that. Roger Federer's story, and I think Roger Federer's the greatest tennis player of all time. That's probably a debate for another show. But he didn't start playing tennis until he was 13 years old. He was a soccer player, he was a field hockey player, he was a musician. He didn't start playing until he was 13 years old. So he really brought a generalist background to the table, and really an understanding of, he talks about this a lot in interviews, of his agility on the tennis court is actually from his early soccer days.
Sure.
Right? His attention to detail is from his music days. Right? So he really brought a generalist perspective to the table. Tiger Woods is and greatest tennis player of all time, or one of the greatest. Tiger Woods is the complete opposite. He was training for golf since he was 2 years old. Yeah. That's when he picked up a club. Hyper specialist, hyper focused. Right. So one of the things we actually talk a lot about is finding individuals, and again, if we take a step back of what our roles are, is putting people in a position to succeed. There are some people that are absolute dynamite specialists, whether that's an individual contributor in a certain function, etc. There are some that are knockout generalists that can really see the big picture across the board, but might struggle in particular execution. Sure. It's our job to steer and move the ship, right? And so we really, that kind of mission to metrics framework, this idea of kind of Rogers and Tigers, we believe strongly in that. And there's a whole bunch of frameworks, I think, that sit below that. One of the frameworks, or I'll share a couple more, that I believe really strongly in, and we've talked about this with our organization, is this almost Punnett square or 2x2 of process and outcome, right? And so the idea is you can have a good outcome, you can have a bad outcome. You can have a good process, you can have a bad process. And there's 4 squares. Good process, good outcome, that's what we're all shooting for. We did things the right way, and things turned out the way that they should be. Bad process, bad outcome, you say, same thing. We didn't do things the way we should have, so things didn't turn out the right way. The interesting conversation is the other axes. It's when you have a good outcome and a bad process, you can get enamored by that. Right. It's very easy to fall into getting enamored by that. I think we've done a pretty cohesive job with our teams, right, at every level, of saying that's luck. That's not going to happen again. Right. So let's revel in it. Great. But that's
a win for now. But
but not necessarily for the future. Right. But the most important one, I think, is the good process, bad outcome. And the reason I think that's really important, and one thing we've talked a lot with our team about, is you can't control everything, right? But what you can always control is running a good process. You can always control your inputs, how much energy you put in, how much work ethic you have, how much effort you put in. And sometimes things are going to turn out great, and sometimes things are going to turn out not so great, right? But if you have a good process and you're playing the long game, then more things are probably going to be good than bad. And that's the mindset that you have to have. It's a similar mindset that sits under that, which is, looking at every challenge or opportunity as, a challenge as we can come through it, right? Again,
going back to those core values and instilling that belief in each person to say, this is not a roadblock. We will find another solution. We'll find another way.
Absolutely.
Together.
Absolutely.
Because we're a happy team.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And interestingly, Veronica, it's good you mentioned that, because quite candidly, part of the way I have been lately growing myself and looking at this is that I believe spirituality is where I kind of dwell a lot and sort of spend my time. And I think the readings from there and translating them to business and the human spirit is critical. And what I'm able to, at this stage, kind of the revelation for me has been that there are elements from spirituality when they start coming into and brought into a value-led organization, it makes the journey beautiful. And really, it's all about a life journey. Pursuit of happiness is a life journey, whether it is personal or it is in a corporate environment or in an entrepreneurial environment. So for me, the vision, the success for each and everybody, if you really ask everybody's ultimate goal in life, what is it? I think all of us, 100%, everybody will say, I want to be happy. And along the way, if you're making a difference, you're making an impact, sometimes because of good process, sometimes because, right, the impact may not be there, but you personally feel fulfilled at each and every stage in life, whether you're working or you're away from work. That is the mix for the right happy team. And that's when I really reflected upon, was how the last 20 years have been for us as a company. I said, that is what we are. We are a happy team. And in fact, what we toasted to was happiness forever. So that's what really defines us. And we are having fun doing it. We're having a lot of fun and enjoying it. So I'm very thankful to my team also.
Yes.
Because without them, we would not be here. And I hope that we continue, with His grace, to continue making as much difference as we have been going forward also.
Well, that is a beautiful way to kind of close out our conversation today on the changing lanes with bringing in new leadership, reinvigorating the company after a 20-year incredible foundation, the core values that you've talked about today, what team looks like. I think before others really understood what culture was, you've been doing it. Now folks are trying to catch up and figure out what that means. Talking about what we need in regards to staying ahead, that innovation. I love that analogy with Tiger Woods and your tennis rock star.
Yep, Roger Federer.
Because it talks about the diversity that's needed in bringing that innovation together.
That's right.
The experiences that we each bring to the table with our own worlds accumulated to drive real creative innovation and impact. And that's an incredible way to view it, to view each person's significance and personal roadmap as something that they can contribute to the organization. We've talked a lot about leadership, about what the future holds, where we're at now, and the advice given to future leaders or to future CEOs. What would you leave them with today? What would you leave them with as far as what should they be thinking about? Or how can they lead in these changing times?
Sure.
Honestly, I think it is belief in yourself, one. And everybody has their own style, right? That's what I was sharing with you. Everybody has their own strengths. We cannot lead somebody else's life.
Yes.
Right? And it's so very important to know who you are, what you want to do with yourself, and how you want to leave your mark in the world. Have faith in yourself, and have faith in your team, and have faith in God, and everything else is going to work out.
To that point, so many people actually don't take the time to understand what they're very good at, what they're very passionate about, what they're curious about. Some are driven and their life is just taking them on. But what you're saying, I think in line with my belief, and the reason we're here today, is take a moment to really assess and reflect where you are and where you want to be. Absolutely. In your career, in your trajectory, in your company. Is it time to stop? Is it time to pivot? Is it time to transform? Take the time to take the inventory. And in a time where, in a day and age where time is minimal and we're very distracted, I think having an opportunity to reflect and have that self-awareness and conversation is more critical than ever before. So thank you for leaving us with that valuable nugget to understand who you are and what what drives you, and be okay with making a U-turn, a stop, a pivot.
I call it slow down to speed up.
Slow down to speed up. We can't be at 100 miles per hour. Sometimes we need 0 to be. And there's a lot of lessons that we can learn in there. So Romeen, I'm going to...
Yeah, absolutely. No, I share in Sandeep's perspective. I mean, I think the most critical thing I would think about, for CEOs, presidents, leaders, et cetera, is you have to be comfortable with yourself, and you have to be comfortable in a world of imperfect information, because there will always be imperfect information. And one of the things that I kind of think constantly about is, if you talk to enough smart advisors or smart people to get their opinions, you'll find a way to cancel out or find both sides of the argument in any situation. So it's very important to be self-aware and to be intentional about your value system, right? Your belief system and your judgment, because you can find any scenario where you can talk to 2 smart advisors and you can find 2 different outcomes or 2 different pieces.
Sure.
But what you have to trust is that when you're leading your organization, you have the best context, right? And you have the best gut sense of what works in your situation. And when you talk to other folks, it's not that their advice is right or wrong necessarily. It just might not be right for your specific organization. So I think the biggest thing for CEOs, especially, in these times where, exactly, Veronica, to your point, there is so much access to information, there is so much overload, of mental stimulation, intellectual stimulation. There's consistently thought leadership coming out, more and more content, right? Is taking a step back, right? Not feeling the need to know everything, to read everything, to talk to everyone, to know every perspective, right? And being comfortable with imperfect information. Because even though we live in a world where all the information is seemingly at our fingertips, most often in the most challenging business contexts, a vast majority of the information is not at your fingertips.
That is really deep, because what comes to my mind is FOMO.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Fear of missing out on information that's out there.
Yeah.
And so what you're basically saying is, give yourself permission to, not have to feel like you have to consume everything.
That's right.
Be knowledgeable, but don't make this voracious attempt to, there's inaccurate information. So have your filter on as well.
Absolutely.
And what I love about what you say too is, and I'm a firm believer, you're the only one really in total perspective of what you're experiencing.
That's right.
And as we advise companies or seek counsel, mentorship, and advisement, we also have to understand where they're positioned and how they see what they see, which I think is very critical. And really trust your gut at the end of the day as well. Is there's something in you that's pulling you as well. So be mindful of that.
That's really what the most successful companies do, right? If you look at the longevity, at a different scale, right? If you look at the longevity of some of the most successful companies in the world, the largest companies in the world, Amazon at its core is really not in the logistics business, the shipping business, et cetera. Amazon is in the business of making its customers happy.
Right. Getting
things faster, getting things on demand. It's the most customer-centric company in the world. And that's why they've been able to be around as long as they have, right? Is as an organization, and that's the mindset.
Take up market share so quickly.
Yeah. And as an organization, that's the mindset that we've adopted, that fundamentally we're not in the talent business. We're not in the workforce business. Of course, that's the business we're in. But the mindset that we've taken is that we are in the business of creating value for our customers. And whether that's value in a specific solution we have today, or that's value in a solution that we need to create to address or meet a need, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think for CEOs, it's really, if you have those 2 tethered forces of very strong introspection, a very strong value system, and very strong belief in your personal conviction and judgment, and you have a hyper focus on your customers and what creates value for them, there's nothing that can stop you.
Excellent.
And especially, I tell you, Veronica, for my fellow, I guess some of the small diversity suppliers, knowing that small really doesn't mean anything.
Absolutely.
Really, the key is, do you have the right team? Do you have the right team that is inspired, is capable, and has the elements to be able to execute? Because that is what gets the impact, whether it is for a customer, internally, or for your supplier partners. That is the key. It is not about size. We all get so caught up in this size situation, right? It really does not matter. Even if you look at a large company, what is it? It's a collection of small teams.
So true.
What is different?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So I really want my partners, peers in supplier diversity, especially to know that we are together. We have to continue doing things together.
Yes.
And know and have the belief that if somebody says you're small, it doesn't mean anything. What truly is that you have the capability and the team and the knowledge to be the very best and deliver the best and fight on your merit. That is the key.
Well, I think that we should end on those very profound words and inspiring thought to imprint on all small businesses and diverse businesses as well, to consider that knowledge. I am so grateful to have the opportunity to explore the insides, the depths of each of you as leaders, and how that is transferred into the work that you do every day, in the culture that you've built and are continuing to build upon, the future services, the value creation that you're giving to your clients and to the community, the impact that you're having as an organization. You're sitting on various boards and continuing to pay it back. So thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for your drive. Thank you for understanding your value and what you bring to the table and inspiring folks to bring the best out of them.
And Veronica, we have to thank you also. You have had an absolutely larger than life impact in this community for diverse businesses. You've been a champion, you've been a partner. It's through, mechanisms like this that you've taken the leadership, to help folks like us share our stories. So we thank you also, not only for having us, but really for the impact that you're having in the community.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Veronica, for, I tell you, not only the happiness that you brought to my life personally, but the happiness you're bringing to the world around you and spreading that to the people around you. So thank you for the impact that you make.
I receive that. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us and listening to two incredible leaders, Sandeep Gauba with Metasys CEO, Romeen Sheth, the president, and taking this company to new levels collectively together, multi-generational, multicultural, doing incredible things, not only in Georgia, in the nation, but around the world. We are here at Driven to Thrive. Where can we find more information about you, gentlemen? Tell us about your website, your social channels, so people can learn more about Metasys.
Absolutely. So you can go to metasysinc.com. That's our website for all of our talent-driven solutions. There's a separate website for GoProcure.com, which is talking on all the innovation in software and otherwise for procurement organizations on the non-labor side.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for listening to Driven to Thrive. We hope that you've enjoyed this incredible interview. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at VMT Speaks, Veronica Maldonado-Torres, the host of Driven to Thrive. And we hope that you have had a chance to consider what success means to you personally and professionally, to redefine it and to live life on your own terms. Remember, it's about not only driven to succeed, but driven to thrive. And how are you spreading that ripple effect in every aspect of your life and for those that you touch? Thanks for being with us and listening today. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you
so much.
Thank you, bro.